In this video, we are going to be taking a look at how to use Bitlocker to encrypt a cluster shared volume and store the recovery key in Active Directory. Like this, we can give the cluster itself access to get this key and decrypt the disk whenever it needs to, in order to read, of course, the data from it, like for example your virtual machines. This way, everything will be virtually unattended for you as a cluster administrator. You don't really have to do anything because the cluster itself can manage the recovery keys. Okay, so let's get going. I'm going to be using the cluster that I did in my last video, and if you want to check it out, you can view the playlist Windows Server 2012 Mega Series. Also, don't forget that most of the things that I talk about in this series also apply to newer versions of Windows Server. With that out of the way, let's begin. First, I want to show you something that you have to do first in Active Directory, or at least I did it. I created a new organizational unit under cluster nodes, where I moved the two Hyper-V servers on which I will test the encryption today. Now on this OU, of course, I didn't make it just so it looks nice. I added a group policy that configures the way the encryption key is stored. And I will show you actually what I did. If I open the policy, we of course go to Policies, Administrative Templates, Windows Components, and we have of course Bitlocker. In Bitlocker we navigate to Fixed Data Drives, and this is what you need to configure. Choose how Bitlocker protected fixed drives can be recovered, and you just enable it. Make sure that everything looks the same as in my case, this being of important value, ADDS, for the storage of the recovery information. And with this in place, with this policy in place, next you just have to make sure that your two cluster nodes have the policy applied, like running a GP update, for example. Restarting them would also work, but we will get to restarting the nodes in a few minutes. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's get to the PowerShell. First, we need to have Bitlocker installed on the two nodes. In our case, there are only two nodes of the cluster. You may have more nodes. Install it on every node. And I'll use invoke command for this to run on both at the same time. And it seems that I had already Bitlocker installed and I forgot. I did some testing beforehand. But in your case now, you should also restart each node. And I recommend, let's say, since these are in a cluster, treat it like it really is a cluster, even if it's a test environment. Restart them one by one, not both at the same time. Now, after you do this, Bitlocker is installed, you have restarted the servers, also group policy should be applied. You can get started with the actual encryption of your cluster storage. In my case, I'm talking about a cluster shared volume. You could also encrypt a normal disk that is placed in the cluster. It works. But very important, if this disk or the volume are used, you have to put them in maintenance mode. So this is what I'm doing with the following command. But of course I have to be with PowerShell remoting on one of the nodes first. And now cluster disk 2 is in maintenance mode. And with this out of the way, We now can get started with the actual encryption process. And first of all, we need to enable BitLocker for that volume. Enable BitLocker. Now we have to get the protector ID. And the next command will actually back up that protector ID. As the command suggests, it will place it in Active Directory. The next two commands, we will run them directly on one of the cluster nodes. And what these commands do is basically grant the cluster itself, the cluster object, access to decrypt that volume. And now the cluster itself has access to read the volume. Now after you do this, everything is okay. You can bring your volume or your disk back to normal operation. Now it's online again. The only difference is that now it's encrypted, and you can see that it's encrypted with a simple command. And it will actually show you that this volume is encrypted 100%, so it's done. It shows you the key protectors, and this you don't see it, but the second one states that the cluster object can access the key protector for this volume, encrypt, decrypted. And protection status, only this one has it on, so only this one is actually encrypted on this server. So then if it's encrypted and the cluster can access it, it should be able to read what's in here from node A and also from node B. And let me also show you in Active Directory where the key is placed. So since we did everything on node A, we should see the recovery information on node A. So this is the information. And if you want also on your server that has Active Directory users and computers to get this tab, then you just have to install this RSAT feature. Okay, so this was a very quick look at how to do this. Of course, you have the code in my GitHub. Thanks a lot for watching. Please like and share if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. And I'll see you in the next one.